Marcus Chen never expected to wake up in a cage made of what looked like crystallized starlight. The last thing he remembered was the explosion that tore through his ship during the defense of Earth's outer colonies. Now he found himself staring at beings that seemed to have stepped out of humanity's darkest nightmares. The Zephyrians were tall, insectoid creatures with 4 arms and chitinous exoskeletons that gleamed like black oil. Their compound eyes reflected rainbow patterns, and, when they spoke, it sounded like grinding metal mixed with the hiss of escaping gas. Marcus had heard stories about them from the few survivors who had escaped their raids, but seeing them in person was entirely different. The human awakens, one of them said in broken standard, the universal language that most species had adopted for trade and diplomacy. Queen Velithara wishes to see the warrior who destroyed 3 of our hunter ships. Marcus stretched his aching muscles and looked around. He was in what appeared to be a holding cell aboard a massive ship. Through the translucent walls, he could see the swirling colors of hyperspace. They were moving fast, but to where? "Where are you taking me?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice steady. He had been a soldier for 15 years, and he knew better than to show fear to the enemy. The Zephyrian guard clicked its mandibles in what might have been amusement. "To the hive world, human. The Queen has plans for you." 2 more guards appeared, and, together they escorted Marcus through corridors that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. The ship itself seemed alive, with walls that breathed slightly and floors that felt warm beneath his feet. Everything about Zephyrian technology was organic, grown rather than built. The throne room was vast, with a ceiling that stretched up into darkness. Thousands of Zephyrians lined the walls, their compound eyes all focused on the center of the room where a massive figure sat on a throne made of what looked like fossilized bone. Queen Velithara was unlike any Zephyrian Marcus had seen. She was easily twice the size of the others, with 6 arms instead of 4, and her exoskeleton had a deep purple hue that seemed to shift in the light. But it was her eyes that caught his attention. Unlike the multifaceted compound eyes of her subjects, hers were large and singular, almost human-like in their intensity. "So," the Queen said, her voice carrying easily across the vast space without seeming loud, "this is the human who has caused so much trouble for my forces." Marcus stood straight, meeting her gaze directly. "I was defending my people. That's what soldiers do." A ripple of clicking and hissing spread through the assembled Zephyrians, but the Queen raised one of her hands, and silence fell instantly. "Your people," she repeated thoughtfully. "Tell me, human, what do you know of fate?" The question caught Marcus off guard. "I know that people make their own fate through their choices and actions." Queen Velithara leaned forward slightly. "An interesting perspective. My people believe differently. We believe that all things are connected by invisible threads, and that some individuals are destined to play crucial roles in the great tapestry of existence." She gestured to a device that descended from the ceiling on mechanical arms. It looked like a combination of crystal and metal, pulsing with inner light. "This is the Fate Reader," the Queen explained. "It can see the threads that connect all living beings. When I first heard reports of the human warrior who fought with such courage and skill, I had my seers examine your thread. What they found was unprecedented." The device positioned itself above Marcus, bathing him in a soft blue glow. Strange symbols appeared in the air around him, shifting and changing like living things. "Impossible," whispered one of the Zephyrian advisors. "The readings are off the scale." Queen Velithara's eyes widened as she studied the display. "Your thread, human, is unlike anything we have ever seen. It blazes with potential, touching the fate lines of countless beings across the galaxy. But, most remarkably," she paused, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, "it is intertwined with my own." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "What does that mean?" "It means," the Queen said slowly, "that our destinies are linked. The ancient prophecies speak of a time when the Queen of the Zephyrians would face a choice that would determine the fate of her entire species. That choice, it seems, involves you." She stood from her throne, her imposing figure casting a long shadow. "You will remain here as my guest while I consult with the seers and study the prophecies more closely. Guards, escort him to the honored prisoner quarters." As Marcus was led away, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a turn that would change everything, not just for him, but for both their species. The honored prisoner quarters turned out to be surprisingly comfortable. The room was large, with a sleeping area, a small sitting space, and even a window that showed the swirling colors of hyperspace. The walls were the same organic material as the rest of the ship, but they had been shaped to be more pleasing to human eyes, with smooth curves and a warm, amber-colored glow. A Zephyrian entered carrying what appeared to be food. Unlike the guards, this one was smaller and moved with less aggressive purpose. "I am Scholar Thix," it said in much better standard than the guards had used. "I have been assigned to ensure your comfort and to answer any questions you might have about our culture." Marcus accepted the food cautiously. It looked strange but smelled surprisingly good. "Why is your queen so interested in this prophecy business?" Scholar Thix settled into what passed for a sitting position among Zephyrians. "To understand that, you must understand our history. The Zephyrian Empire was once much larger than it is today. We ruled over dozens of worlds and commanded fleets that could darken the stars. But a great catastrophe befell us nearly 1,000 years ago." "What kind of catastrophe?" "A plague, but not one that affected our bodies. It attacked our minds, our very consciousness. Entire populations went mad, turning on each other in frenzied violence. Worlds were depopulated overnight. Our civilization nearly collapsed." Marcus paused in his eating. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. The plague passed, but it left us changed. We became more aggressive, more territorial. The wise and peaceful Zephyrians of old were replaced by the warriors you know today. But the prophecies, written before the plague, speak of a time when our true nature might be restored." "And your queen thinks I'm part of that?" Scholar Thix's compound eyes reflected the room's amber light. "The prophecies speak of an outsider, a warrior from a distant star, whose arrival would herald a time of great change. This warrior would not be Zephyrian, yet their fate would be bound to our queen's. Together, they would face a choice that would either restore our people to their former glory or doom them to extinction." Marcus set down his utensil. "That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you just captured." "Indeed. But the Queen takes the prophecies very seriously. They have guided Zephyrian civilization for millennia, and they have never been wrong." Over the following days, Marcus found himself in a strange routine. Scholar Thix would visit regularly, bringing food and engaging in long conversations about human and Zephyrian culture. Marcus learned that before the plague, Zephyrians had been explorers and philosophers seeking knowledge and beauty throughout the galaxy. The warrior culture they had adopted was a survival mechanism, but it had trapped them in a cycle of violence that many of their leaders wanted to break. Meanwhile, Queen Velithara would summon him periodically to the throne room, where teams of seers would perform various rituals and tests. They would wave strange devices over him, have him touch ancient artifacts, and study his reactions to different stimuli. Through it all, the queen watched with those intense, almost human eyes. "The readings continue to confirm the prophecies," she told him after one particularly long session. "But there is something the seers cannot determine. The prophecies speak of a choice that we must make together, but they do not reveal what that choice will be or when it will come." "Maybe prophecies aren't meant to be taken so literally," Marcus suggested. "Maybe they're more like guidelines than exact predictions." Queen Velithara considered this. "An interesting thought. Your people do not believe in fate the way we do, yet here you are, exactly where the prophecy said you would be." It was during his third week aboard the ship that everything changed. Marcus was in his quarters, practicing the meditation techniques that Scholar Thix had taught him, when alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Scholar Thix burst into his room, moving faster than Marcus had ever seen a Zephyrian move. "We are under attack. Ships of unknown design have appeared from nowhere and are firing on the fleet." Through his window, Marcus could see the chaos outside. Sleek, silver ships that seemed to bend light around them were engaging the Zephyrian fleet. Their weapons fired beams of pure white energy that cut through Zephyrian bioships like paper. "Who are they?" Marcus asked, but Scholar Thix was already gone. The ship shuddered under impact, and the lights flickered. Marcus could hear the sounds of battle echoing through the organic corridors. He tried his door and found it unlocked. Either the security systems had been damaged, or someone had deliberately released him. He made his way toward the throne room, following the corridors he had memorized during his time aboard. Zephyrian crew members rushed past him, but none tried to stop him. They were too focused on the battle to worry about one human prisoner. The throne room was in chaos when he arrived. Queen Velithara stood at the center of the room, barking orders to her commanders. The great display screen showed the battle raging outside, and it was clear that the Zephyrians were losing badly. "My queen," one of the commanders reported. "These ships use technology we have never encountered. Our weapons cannot penetrate their shields, and their weapons cut through our hulls like they were made of tissue." Marcus stepped forward. "What do you need?" Queen Velithara turned to him, and, for the first time since he had met her, he saw something like desperation in her eyes. "These attackers appeared just as we were about to enter the sacred system, the heart of our empire. If they destroy the fleet here, they will have a clear path to our hive world and our breeding colonies." "Who are they?" "We do not know. They have not responded to any communications. They simply appeared and began attacking." Marcus studied the tactical displays. The enemy ships were fast and maneuverable, using hit-and-run tactics that were devastating the larger Zephyrian vessels. But there was something familiar about their movement patterns. "I need access to your ship's database," Marcus said. "I think I might know who these are." Queen Velithara gestured to one of her technicians, who quickly provided Marcus with a terminal. He called up everything the Zephyrians had on human military tactics and ship designs, cross-referencing it with what he was seeing in the battle. "There," he said, pointing to the screen. "See how they're moving? Those ships are using advanced human AI tactical programming, but the ships themselves aren't human design. Humans are behind this attack?" Queen Velithara's voice carried a dangerous edge. "No," Marcus said quickly. "But someone has captured human AI and is using it to control alien ships. There's only one group I know of that has the technology and the motivation to do something like this." He pulled up another file from his memory. "The Collectors. They're a machine intelligence that appeared at the edge of human space about 5 years ago. They've been capturing ships and technology from every species they encounter, assimilating it into their own forces." Queen Velithara stared at the tactical display with new understanding. A machine intelligence that learns from its enemies. How do we fight such a thing? "The same way humans have been fighting them," Marcus replied. "With unpredictability. Machines, no matter how advanced, have trouble dealing with truly random behavior. They learn patterns and counter them, but if you don't follow patterns." Another massive impact shook the ship. Through the displays, Marcus could see that only half the Zephyrian fleet remained. "I have an idea," Marcus continued, "but I'll need your trust and access to one of your fighter craft." Queen Velithara met his gaze. "You would fight for us? Against your own species' technology?" "This isn't human technology anymore," Marcus said firmly. "The Collectors are a threat to all organic life. If they break through here and assimilate Zephyrian biotechnology, they'll become unstoppable." For a long moment, the Queen studied him. Around them, the battle raged and the ship continued to take damage. Finally, she nodded. "Scholar Thix," she called. "Escort this human to the fighter bays. Give him access to our fastest interceptor." As Marcus was led away, he heard Queen Velithara addressing her remaining commanders. "All ships are to follow the human's lead. Whatever tactic he employs, support him." The Zephyrian interceptor was unlike any fighter Marcus had ever seen. It was grown rather than built, with control surfaces that responded to neural impulses rather than manual controls. Scholar Thix helped him into the biosuit that would interface with the ship's nervous system. "This is unprecedented," Scholar Thix said as he made the final connections. "No outsider has ever been permitted to pilot one of our ships." "Let's hope I can make it worth the risk," Marcus replied. The interceptor launched from the bioship's belly, and Marcus immediately felt the strange sensation of being connected to a living craft. The ship responded to his thoughts as much as his actions, and he could sense its eagerness for battle. The collector ships were indeed using human AI tactical programs, but they had been enhanced with alien technology that made them faster and more deadly than anything he had faced before. As Marcus approached the battle, he could see the Zephyrian ships struggling to keep up with their movements. But Marcus had spent 5 years fighting the Collectors, and he knew their weaknesses. The AI programs were brilliant at analyzing and countering tactical patterns, but they had trouble with pure instinct and emotion-driven decisions. Instead of following any established attack pattern, Marcus let his emotions guide him. His anger at seeing his home colonies burned. His grief for fallen comrades. His frustration at being captured. His growing respect for the Zephyrians and their queen. He dove into the enemy formation like a berserker, making decisions based on gut feeling rather than tactical analysis. The interceptor responded to his emotional state, its biosystems flooding him with combat stimulants that enhanced his reflexes and awareness. The effect on the Collector ships was immediate. Their perfectly coordinated movements began to falter as they tried to predict his next move. Marcus's attack pattern was chaos given form, and the AI couldn't process it fast enough to develop effective counters. Behind him, the surviving Zephyrian ships began to follow his lead, abandoning their own tactical doctrines in favor of pure aggression. The bioships seemed to respond to their crew's heightened emotional states, moving with a fluidity and unpredictability that the Collector AIs couldn't match. The tide of battle began to turn. Collector ships that had seemed invincible moments before started taking damage as the Zephyrian weapons found gaps in their shields. Marcus's interceptor danced between the enemy vessels, his connection to the living ship allowing him to anticipate their movements in ways that pure technology couldn't match. But the Collectors adapted quickly. Marcus could see them beginning to modify their tactics, trying to account for the emotional unpredictability of their opponents. In a few more minutes, they would have new counters developed. That's when Marcus made the hardest decision of his military career. Instead of continuing to fight the Collector ships, he turned his interceptor toward the largest enemy vessel and set his course for a collision. The bioship understood his intention immediately. Through their neural link, Marcus felt its willingness to sacrifice itself for the greater good. Together, they accelerated toward the Collector command ship, building up speed and energy for a devastating impact. The Collector ship's defenses turned toward him, but Marcus's emotional state had reached a kind of pure focus that made him nearly impossible to target. He wove through their defensive fire like he was dancing with death itself. At the last moment, just before impact, Marcus felt something unexpected through the bioship's neural link. It wasn't just his own emotions driving the ship, he was connected to something vast and ancient, a collective consciousness that spanned the entire Zephyrian fleet. And, in that moment of connection, he understood what the prophecies had really meant. The choice wasn't his alone to make. It belonged to both species, working together. Instead of ramming the Collector ship, Marcus pulled up sharply and broadcast a message on all frequencies. "This is Commander Marcus Chen of the Human Colonial Defense Force. All Zephyrian vessels, prepare for synchronized strike. Target the command ship's power core on my mark." What followed was unlike anything in recorded military history. Human tactical knowledge, transmitted through Marcus, combined with Zephyrian biotechnology and their natural hive mind capabilities. The entire surviving fleet moved as one organism, each ship positioning itself with perfect precision for a coordinated assault. "Mark!" Marcus called out, and every Zephyrian weapon fired simultaneously. The concentrated firepower overwhelmed the Collector command ship's defenses completely. The vessel exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the entire battlefield, and the remaining Collector ships, suddenly, cut off from their central AI, began to drift aimlessly. The battle was over, but Marcus realized that something much more significant had just begun. The victory celebration aboard the Zephyrian flagship was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. The throne room filled with the harmonic clicking and buzzing that served as Zephyrian music, while bioluminescent patterns danced across the walls in complex spirals. But, beneath the joy, Marcus sensed something deeper had changed in the collective consciousness of the fleet. Queen Velithara approached him as he stood near the great viewport, watching the disabled Collector ships drift in space. Her 6 arms moved in what he had learned was a gesture of deep respect among her people. "What you did today should have been impossible," she said. "A human mind, connecting to our hive consciousness, guiding our entire fleet as one entity." The seers are calling it a miracle. Marcus touched his temple, where he could still feel a faint echo of the connection. It didn't feel like guiding. It felt like belonging. Like I was part of something larger than myself. That is precisely what concerns me, the Queen replied. Scholar Thix, bring the readings from the Fate Reader. The scholar approached with a portable version of the device that had first scanned Marcus. When it activated, the symbols that appeared were completely different from before. Where once there had been a blazing thread of individual potential, now there were multiple threads intertwined in complex patterns. The connection has changed your fate pattern, Scholar Thix explained. You are no longer entirely human, just as we are no longer entirely Zephyrian. The prophecies speak of this phenomenon, but we never understood what it meant until now. Queen Velithara's expression was troubled. There are consequences to what has happened. A hive consciousness was not meant to include alien minds. Our medical cast is reporting strange effects throughout the fleet. As if summoned by her words, a Zephyrian medic approached and delivered a rapid report in their native language. Marcus was surprised to find that he could understand fragments of it, though he had never learned Zephyrian. What's happening? He asked. Our people are experiencing new thoughts, new emotions that are foreign to our species, the Queen explained. Some are feeling what you would call nostalgia for places they have never been. Others are having dreams of blue skies and yellow suns, though our homeworld has a red sun and purple sky. Marcus felt a chill of realization. They're experiencing human memories. My memories. And you are experiencing ours, Scholar Thix added. Can you sense the great hive cities of our homeworld? The singing crystals of Zephyr Prime? The ancient archives where our history is preserved in living memory? Marcus closed his eyes and found that he could indeed sense these things, like distant music just at the edge of hearing. This connection, is it permanent? We do not know, Queen Velithara admitted. Nothing like this has happened before. But there is something else you must know. The attack by the collectors was not random. Our intelligence network has discovered that they have been systematically targeting species with advanced biotechnology. They attacked us specifically to acquire our organic shipbuilding capabilities. She gestured to the main display, which showed a star map with several systems marked in red. These are all species that have been attacked in the past month. The collectors are building towards something, gathering specific technologies from each civilization they encounter. What kind of technologies? Marcus asked. The Vorthak had advanced energy shielding. The Luminar possessed matter transmission technology. The Ethereal Collective had mastered time dilation fields. And now they were after our biotechnology. Marcus studied the pattern. They're not just collecting random tech. They're gathering the components needed to build something specific. Something that requires all these different capabilities working together. That is our conclusion as well. But what could require such diverse technologies? Before Marcus could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. A communications officer rushed to the Queen with an urgent message. My Queen! Long-range sensors have detected massive collector activity in the Nexus system. They appear to be constructing something enormous. The main display shifted to show sensor readings from the Nexus system, a region of space where several major hyperspace routes intersected. What they saw made everyone in the throne room fall silent. The collectors had built a structure that defied easy description. It was part space station, part ship, and part something else entirely. Sections of it flickered in and out of normal space, suggesting the integration of time dilation technology. Energy shields surrounded it in layers, and bioorganic components could be seen growing across its hull like living coral. It's massive, Marcus whispered. That thing must be the size of a small moon. But what is its purpose? Queen Velithara asked. Scholar Thix consulted his data tablets rapidly, cross-referencing with our historical archives. My Queen, I believe it may be a harvester. Explain, the Queen commanded. Ancient Zephyrian texts speak of legendary weapons created by long-dead civilizations. Harvesters were designed to drain the life force from entire star systems, converting organic matter into pure energy to power their creators' technology. Marcus felt a cold dread settling in his stomach. If something like that exists, why haven't we seen them before? Because the civilizations that built them destroyed themselves with their own creations, Scholar Thix replied. The harvesters were so powerful that they eventually consumed everything, including their makers. They were thought to be myths. Queen Velithara's compound eyes reflected the light from the display. If the collectors have found the remains of one and are attempting to restore it using stolen technology, every living world in the galaxy is at risk, Marcus finished. We have to stop them. We, the Queen asked. This is no longer just a Zephyrian problem, is it? Marcus met her gaze steadily. No. And I don't think it's a problem that either of our species can solve alone. Over the next several hours, the situation became clearer and more desperate. Intelligence reports confirmed that the collectors had not only captured the remains of an ancient harvester but had successfully integrated technologies from dozens of different species into its systems. The bioorganic components were already spreading across its structure like a plague, converting dead matter into living tissue that could process energy more efficiently. How long until it's operational? Marcus asked the assembled council of Zephyrian experts. Based on the rate of bioorganic growth and the energy signatures we're detecting, perhaps 3 standard days, replied the lead technician. 3 days to save the galaxy, Marcus muttered. No pressure at all. Queen Velithara had been silent during most of the briefings, but now she stood and addressed the room. There is something I must tell you all. The prophecies contain a passage that we have never fully understood, until now. She gestured to an ancient text that appeared on the display, written in flowing Zephyrian script that somehow Marcus could now read. When the great devourer awakens and turns its hunger toward the light of living worlds, the joined spirits must make the ultimate sacrifice. Only through the willing dissolution of the self can the many be saved from the void. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. You think the prophecy is referring to the harvester, Marcus said. The great devourer. And the joined spirits, Scholar Thix added quietly, would be you and the Queen, connected through the hive consciousness. Queen Velithara nodded slowly. The ultimate sacrifice suggests that stopping this threat will require us to give up the very connection that makes victory possible. Marcus felt the truth of it through their link. The connection that had allowed them to coordinate the fleet so effectively was also making him more Zephyrian and the Queen's people more human. Over time, both species would be fundamentally changed, possibly losing what made them unique. There has to be another way, Marcus said. Perhaps, the Queen replied. But, first, we must reach the Nexus system and assess the situation directly. If the harvester becomes operational, the question of our connection will become irrelevant. The journey to the Nexus system took 18 hours at maximum hyperspace velocity. During that time, Marcus found himself spending more time with Queen Velithara, trying to understand the full extent of their connection. She had arranged for private quarters adjacent to the throne room where they could speak without the constant presence of advisors and guards. Tell me about your world, she said during one of these conversations. I can sense fragments through our link, but I want to understand it through your words. Marcus described Earth and its colonies, the blue oceans and green forests, the vast cities where billions of humans lived and worked. He spoke of human art and music, of the drive to explore and discover that had carried his species to the stars. Your people sound much like ours were, before the plague changed us, Queen Velithara said thoughtfully. We too were explorers once, seeking beauty and knowledge throughout the galaxy. Maybe that's why the connection worked, Marcus suggested. We're more alike than either species realized. Or maybe that's exactly what the prophecies intended, she replied. Perhaps this crisis was meant to remind us of what we could become together. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Scholar Thix, who looked more agitated than Marcus had ever seen him. My queen, we have received a transmission from the Nexus system. It appears to be from the collectors, but what? She demanded. It is being transmitted on biological frequencies. The message is alive. In the throne room, they gathered around the communications array as the living message played. What emerged was not sound or visual data, but something that spoke directly to the consciousness of every organic being who received it. The message was simple and terrifying: biological entities of this galaxy. The harvest begins. Prepare for conversion. Images flashed through the shared consciousness of the throne room. Views of the completed harvester, now truly massive and covered in pulsing bioorganic tissue. Fleets of collector ships surrounding it like antibodies protecting a virus. And, most disturbing of all, glimpses of other worlds where similar harvesters were beginning to awaken. There are more of them, Marcus realized with horror. The collectors aren't just rebuilding one harvester. They're activating an entire network. Queen Velithara's expression hardened with resolve. Then, we cannot simply destroy the one at Nexus. We must find a way to stop them all. The network must have a central control point, Marcus reasoned. Something that coordinates all the harvesters. If we could disrupt that. The prophecies speak of a heart of the void, Scholar Thix interjected. It was said to be the source from which all harvesters drew their power. But, it was thought to be purely mythical. Everything about this situation was thought to be mythical until it started happening, Marcus pointed out. Where would such a thing be located? Scholar Thix consulted his archives rapidly. Ancient texts suggest it would be hidden in a place where space and time are unstable, where normal physical laws do not apply. Somewhere that could exist between dimensions. Marcus and Queen Velithara exchanged a look of understanding through their shared consciousness. They both knew where such a place might be found. The Shattered Realm, Queen Velithara said. It's a region of space that was damaged in an ancient war, where reality itself is fractured. Ships that enter it are usually never seen again. But, if the heart of the void exists anywhere, that's where it would be, Marcus concluded. Hidden in a place where normal space travel is impossible. This changes everything, the Queen said. We cannot simply attack the harvester at Nexus. We must find a way to reach the Shattered Realm and locate the heart of the void. Even if we could reach it, how would we destroy something that exists between dimensions? Scholar Thix asked. Marcus felt the answer forming in his mind, emerging from the deeper connection he shared with the Queen and, through her, with the collective consciousness of the Zephyrian fleet. We wouldn't destroy it, he said slowly. We would overload it. The heart draws power from living beings to feed the harvesters. If we could reverse that flow, make it try to process more life energy than it was designed to handle. It would burn itself out, Queen Velithara finished. But, such an attempt would require more life force than any individual could provide. Not an individual, Marcus said, his voice heavy with the weight of realization. But, a connected group of beings, sharing their life force through a quantum consciousness link. The implication hung in the air like a death sentence. To overload the heart of the void would require not just their connection, but the willing participation of every Zephyrian in the fleet. And, the energy required would likely consume them all. The ultimate sacrifice, Scholar Thix whispered. Queen Velithara stood and moved to the great viewport, staring out at the swirling colors of hyperspace. There must be another way. But, even as she said it, Marcus could feel through their link that she knew there wasn't. The prophecies had been leading to this moment for 1,000 years, preparing her people for a choice between certain death and possible extinction. How long until we reach Nexus? Marcus asked. 6 hours, came the reply from the navigation officer. Marcus stood and joined Queen Velithara at the viewport. Through their connection, he could sense her thoughts and fears, just as she could sense his. If we do this, she said quietly, both our species will be changed forever. The connection that would make victory possible would also merge our consciousness permanently. Humans and Zephyrians would become something new, something that has never existed before. Maybe that's not such a bad thing, Marcus replied. Maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs to survive what's coming. She turned to look at him with those almost human eyes. Are you prepared to stop being human to save humanity? Marcus considered the question seriously. Through their link, he could feel the vast network of Zephyrian consciousness, millions of minds working together with a harmony that humanity had never achieved. But, he could also sense the human qualities that were spreading through that network: curiosity, individualism, the fierce drive to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. I don't think I would stop being human, he said finally. I think I would become more than human. We both would. In the hours that remained before they reached the Nexus system, Marcus and Queen Velithara worked together to prepare both their peoples for what was to come. The plan they developed was complex and dangerous, requiring perfect coordination between human tactical knowledge and Zephyrian biotechnology. First, they would need to distract the collectors at the Nexus system, drawing their attention away from the main threat. A small force would attack the Harvester directly, not to destroy it but to make the collectors believe that was the primary objective. Meanwhile, a single ship carrying Marcus, Queen Velithara, and a skeleton crew would attempt to reach the Shattered Realm. Using the combined consciousness of the fleet as a guide, they would navigate the fractured spacetime to locate the heart of the void. Once there, they would have to establish a connection between the heart and the fleet's collective consciousness, then overloaded with life energy from every Zephyrian in the fleet. The feedback would likely kill everyone involved, but it would also destroy the entire Harvester network and prevent the consumption of countless worlds. There is one more thing, Queen Velithara said as they made final preparations. The prophecies contain one last passage that I have not shared with you. She called up the text on a private display, and Marcus read the flowing script with his newly acquired understanding of Zephyrian. When the joined spirits sacrifice themselves for the many, death shall not be the end. From the union of two peoples shall arise a new form of life, one that exists in both flesh and consciousness, in both time and space. The children of this union shall inherit the galaxy and guide it toward a new dawn. Marcus stared at the words. Children? What does that mean? I believe, Queen Velithara said carefully, it means that our sacrifice will not result in simple death. The connection between our species, forged through shared consciousness and strengthened by shared sacrifice, will create something unprecedented. A new form of existence that transcends the physical limitations of both our peoples. As they approached the Nexus system and prepared to face their destiny, Marcus felt a strange sense of peace. Whatever happened next, he knew that it would change the galaxy forever. The only question was whether the change would be evolution or extinction. The final battle was about to begin. The Nexus system was a graveyard of light. Where once 3 stars had shone in perfect harmony, creating a nexus of stable hyperspace routes, now only one remained. The other 2 had been drained to dim red dwarf stars, their energy feeding the massive harvester that hung in space like a metallic cancer. Marcus stood beside Queen Velithara on the bridge of the stealth ship Whisper of Stars, watching the tactical displays with growing horror. The harvester had grown even larger than their intelligence had suggested. Bioorganic tendrils stretched out from its core like the roots of some cosmic tree, each one hundreds of kilometers long and pulsing with stolen starlight. It's beautiful, Queen Velithara said quietly, and Marcus was shocked to realize she was right. The harvester moved with an organic grace that was hypnotic, its surface patterns shifting like aurora across a living sky. I can see why the ancients who built it thought they were creating art rather than weapons. Beautiful destruction is still destruction, Marcus replied, but he felt the same terrible fascination through their link. The harvester was feeding on the death of stars, converting matter and energy into something that sang with alien harmonies only they could hear. Scholar Thix approached from his station at the navigation console. My queen, we have identified the entrance to the Shattered Realm. It appears as a discontinuity in spacetime approximately 3 light hours from our current position. And the distraction fleet? Marcus asked. Admiral Korvax reports ready on all fronts. The moment we begin our approach to the Shattered Realm, he will commence the attack on the harvester. Queen Velithara nodded slowly. Through their shared consciousness, Marcus could feel her pain at the knowledge that most of the brave souls in the distraction fleet would not survive the day. But both of them knew there was no alternative. Signal Admiral Korvax, she commanded. Tell him that the Queen remembers every name, and that their sacrifice will echo through eternity. As the Whisper of Stars began its approach to the Shattered Realm, the distraction fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the harvester. Marcus watched through the long-range sensors as thousands of Zephyrian bioships engaged the collector forces in desperate battle. The collector response was immediate and overwhelming. Swarms of their adaptive fighters poured out from the harvester like angry insects, their hulls shifting and changing as they analyzed Zephyrian weapons and developed counters. But the bioships had learned from their earlier encounter, fighting with the emotional unpredictability that Marcus had taught them. The distraction is working, Scholar Thix reported. Collector forces are converging on Admiral Korvax's fleet. Our path to the Shattered Realm is clear. The entrance to the Shattered Realm appeared on their screens as a region where space itself seemed to stutter and skip. Stars appeared and disappeared randomly, and the laws of physics bent in ways that hurt to observe directly. All stop, Queen Velithara ordered. From here, we proceed on bionavigation alone. She moved to the center of the bridge and placed her hands on the ship's neural interface, a living console that pulsed with the same rhythm as a Zephyrian heartbeat. Marcus joined her, placing his own hands adjacent to hers, and immediately felt the ship's consciousness merge with their own. The Whisper of Stars was different from the interceptor he had flown. This ship was ancient, its bioneural patterns developed over generations of careful breeding. It remembered the time before the plague, when Zephyrians had been peaceful explorers. It carried within its living memory the knowledge needed to navigate realms where normal technology failed. As they entered the Shattered Realm, reality became fluid around them. Marcus saw glimpses of possible futures, fragments of the past, and spaces that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Through the ship's senses, they detected the twisted remnants of ancient civilizations, the bones of long-dead starships, and energy patterns that defied all known physics. There, Queen Velithara whispered, her consciousness guiding the ship toward a phenomenon that registered on no instrument but could be felt through their merged awareness. The heart of the void. What they found defied description in any language either of their species possessed. The heart existed in the spaces between dimensions, a structure that seemed to be built from crystallized emptiness itself. It pulsed with a rhythm that synchronized with every harvester across the galaxy, pumping life energy stolen from countless worlds to feed the ancient hunger of its creators. How do we interface with something like that? Marcus asked. We don't, Queen Velithara replied. We become part of it. She led him to the ship's central chamber, where the Whisper of Stars kept its most precious resource, a living archive that contained the genetic memories of the entire Zephyrian species. It appeared as a crystalline tree whose branches held glowing nodes of condensed consciousness. This is our people's soul, she explained. Every Zephyrian who has ever lived has left a trace of their thoughts and memories in this archive. Through our connection to the fleet, we can access the combined consciousness of every ship in our armada. Marcus understood immediately. We're going to use the entire Zephyrian fleet as a single massive brain. More than that. We're going to use their life force as ammunition. The process required Marcus to merge his consciousness completely with the living archive. As his mind touched the crystalline nodes, he was overwhelmed by the sheer scope of Zephyrian history. He experienced the glory of their ancient civilization, the terror of the plague years, the long struggle to rebuild their society. But, more than that, he felt the hopes and dreams of millions of individuals, each one unique yet part of a greater whole. Through the link, he could sense every ship in the fleet engaged in battle around the Harvester. He felt Admiral Korvax's determination as his flagship rammed a collector dreadnought. He experienced the fear and courage of young pilots flying their first combat missions. He shared the grief of veterans who had lost too many friends to count. But, most powerfully, he felt their trust. Every Zephyrian in the fleet was prepared to give their life to stop the Harvesters, and they were counting on him and their queen to make that sacrifice meaningful. Now, Queen Velithara said, and together they reached out across space to touch the heart of the void. The contact was like grabbing a star with bare hands. The heart was ancient beyond measure, built by a civilization that had transcended physical existence eons ago. It had been feeding on life energy for so long that it had forgotten any purpose beyond hunger. Through their connection, Marcus and Queen Velithara began to reverse the flow of energy. Instead of allowing the heart to drain life from the galaxy, they forced it to accept the willing sacrifice of the Zephyrian fleet. Thousands of bioships opened their consciousness completely, pouring their crew's life force into the connection. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The heart, designed to process the slow drain of dying worlds, was overwhelmed by the concentrated life energy of an entire fleet offered freely and simultaneously. Feedback loops began to form as the ancient structure tried to handle more power than it had ever been designed to process. But the collectors had noticed their attack on the heart. Through the Harvester network, they began sending defensive measures through the dimensional barriers that separated normal space from the shattered realm. "Collector hunters, incoming!" Scholar Thix called out from his station. "They're adapting to our dimensional frequency." Marcus felt the whisper of stars shudder as alien weapons began to impact its hull. But he couldn't release his connection to the heart without losing all the life force that the fleet was pouring into the attack. That's when Queen Velithara made the ultimate choice. Through their link, Marcus felt her decision before she announced it. "I'm going to merge completely with the heart," she said. "My consciousness will become the conduit for the fleet's sacrifice. But once I make that connection, there will be no way back." "Then, I'm going with you," Marcus replied without hesitation. "No. Someone has to guide the fleet home after this is over. Someone who understands both species and can help them rebuild." "The prophecy said we face this choice together," Marcus insisted. "Join spirits, remember?" Queen Velithara's compound eyes reflected the light from the crystalline archive. "The prophecies also said that from our union would arise a new form of life. If we both merge with the heart, who will nurture that new life?" Before Marcus could respond, she released her physical body's connection to the ship and poured her entire consciousness into the heart of the void. The effect was like a supernova of pure thought. Queen Velithara's mind, enhanced by her connection to Marcus and the Zephyrian fleet, spread throughout the entire Harvester network like wildfire. Marcus felt her presence in every node, every connection, every stolen fragment of life energy. The ancient heart convulsed as it tried to process a consciousness that was both individual and collective, alien and familiar, willing and unwilling to be consumed. Queen Velithara fought the heart's attempts to drain her essence, instead using her connection to redirect its hunger back upon itself. One by one, the harvesters across the galaxy began to fail. The stolen energy they had been using to grow and spread was suddenly turned inward, causing them to consume their own systems. The bioorganic components that had made them so adaptable became cancers that ate them from within. But the feedback was killing Queen Velithara as well. Marcus could feel her consciousness fragmenting under the strain, pieces of her mind scattered across the dimensional barriers that separated the heart from normal space. That's when Marcus made his own choice. He followed her into the heart. The merger was unlike anything either species had ever experienced. Marcus's human consciousness, with its emphasis on individual identity and linear thought, acted like a stabilizing force for Queen Velithara's collective awareness. Together, they formed a new kind of mind that was both singular and plural, finite and infinite. Through their combined will, they turned the heart of the void from a weapon of consumption into an engine of creation. The life energy that had been stolen from countless worlds began to flow back where it belonged, but it carried with it the imprint of their merged consciousness. Marcus felt himself dying and being born simultaneously. His human body aboard the Whisper of Stars collapsed as his consciousness fully merged with the heart, but that same consciousness was spreading across the galaxy through the energy patterns they were sending out. When the process finally completed, the heart of the void cracked like an egg and released something entirely new into the universe. Scholar Thix found Marcus's body in the Whisper of Stars' central chamber, apparently lifeless beside the crystalline archive. But, as he prepared to mourn his friend and queen, the archive began to pulse with new patterns of light. Slowly, carefully, a new consciousness spoke through the bioship's communication systems. "We are Marcus. We are Velithara. We are the bridge between species." The voice was neither human nor Zephyrian, but something that contained elements of both. Around the galaxy, similar voices began to speak through the energy networks that connected all living worlds. The heart of the void had been transformed into a heart of life, spreading the merged consciousness of the human warrior and the alien queen to every corner of the universe. But they were not conquering or consuming. Instead, they were teaching. Worlds that had been isolated for millennia suddenly found themselves able to communicate across species barriers. Technologies that had been incompatible began to work in harmony. Most importantly, the aggressive territorial instincts that drove most species to conflict were balanced by a deeper understanding of interconnectedness. 5 years later, Scholar Thix stood in the Great Assembly of the New Galactic Alliance, watching representatives from hundreds of species work together to explore the mysteries of the universe. The Zephyrian Empire and human colonial defense force had become the foundation for something unprecedented, a truly cooperative galactic civilization. The body of Marcus Chin had never awakened, but Marcus himself was everywhere. Through the quantum consciousness network that he and Queen Velithara had created, he could speak with anyone, anywhere in the galaxy. He had become the living embodiment of the bridge between species. "Do you ever regret the choice you made?" Scholar Thix asked during one of their frequent conversations. Marcus's voice came from the chamber's bioacoustic systems, warm with familiar humor. "How can I regret becoming more than I ever imagined possible? I'm no longer just human, and Velithara is no longer just Zephyrian. We're something new. Something that can help guide the galaxy toward a future where cooperation replaces conquest." And the prophecies were more accurate than anyone realized. We did face the ultimate sacrifice, and we did make the choice that determined the fate of our species. But the real prophecy wasn't about death. It was about transformation. Through the great viewport of the assembly, Scholar Thix could see ships from dozens of worlds working together to construct the first truly integrated space station. Human engineering worked alongside Zephyrian biotechnology, while species that had been enemies for centuries collaborated on projects that would benefit everyone. The children the prophecy spoke of, Scholar Thix realized. They're not biological offspring. They're the new civilizations being born from the union of our cultures. Every time two species learn to work together instead of fighting, a new child of our union is born, Marcus agreed. Every breakthrough in communication or technology that bridges the gap between different forms of life. Every act of cooperation that chooses understanding over fear. In the depths of space, the quantum consciousness network continued to grow, connecting more worlds and more species to the greater tapestry of galactic civilization. The human warrior who had inadvertently become part of an alien queen's fate had fulfilled the destiny in ways neither species could have imagined. The galaxy was still dangerous. There were still conflicts and challenges that required courage and sacrifice to overcome. But now those challenges were met not by single species fighting alone, but by a growing alliance of worlds united by the understanding that their fates were intertwined. Marcus Chen had saved humanity by becoming more than human. Queen Velithara had saved her people by becoming more than Zephyrian. Together, they had become something that would guide the galaxy toward a future where all species could thrive. The age of cooperation had begun, and it would last as long as there were minds willing to reach across the void to touch another consciousness with understanding rather than fear. In a universe full of wonders and terrors, that was perhaps the greatest miracle of all, the simple choice to see strangers as potential friends rather than inevitable enemies. As the Great Assembly continued its work, planning expeditions to unexplored regions and establishing new colonies where multiple species could live in harmony, the Quantum Consciousness Network carried a constant message from Marcus and Velithara to every connected world: we are all one people, scattered across many forms. We are all part of the same story, written in countless languages. We are all children of the same stars, destined to return to them together. The human warrior had found his place in the alien queen's fate, and, in doing so, had helped write a new chapter in the destiny of every living being in the galaxy. It was a story that would continue long after the last star burned out, carried forward by consciousness itself across dimensions yet to be discovered. The prophecies had been fulfilled, but the real adventure was just beginning.